Ja, liebe Webinarteilnehmerinnen, liebe Webinarteilnehmer, ich darf Sie recht herzlich begrüßen zum heutigen Webinar der Metallic Minerals, ein Explorationsunternehmen aus Kanada auf der Suche nach großen, potenten Silbervorkommen. Mein Name ist Wolfgang Seibold, ich bin CEO der Axinocapital Group of Companies. Ja, wie gesagt, es geht hier heute um Silber. Ich habe hier eine Silbermünze. Natürlich nicht um einen Produzenten, der dieses Silber herstellt, sondern um ein Explorationsunternehmen. Und ich zeige Ihnen auf, was interessant ist bei Explorationsunternehmen. Natürlich muss ich auch wieder unseren Disclaimer hier zuerst nennen. Wir sind kein Finanzdienstleister und Vermittler, wir sind Aktionäre, wir sind Investoren und Kommunikationsdienstleister. Wir müssen das hier offenlegen. Jeder Investor handelt auf seine eigene Rechnung und auf eigene Verantwortung. Wir machen keine Empfehlungen hier, sondern präsentieren nur dieses Unternehmen und unsere persönliche Einschätzung. Wir haben jetzt zu Beginn ein Projektvideo von der Firma Investment-Chancen zur Verfügung gestellt. Ich denke, es gibt Ihnen einen sehr, sehr guten Eindruck. Und ich werde jetzt dieses Video starten. Bleiben Sie dran.
Welcome to the Invest Yukon Tour with Metallic Minerals. My name is Greg Johnson. I'm President and Chairman of Metallic Minerals, focused in the Keno Hill Silver District and the Klondike Gold District. The Keno Hill Silver District is one of the world's highest grade silver producing regions. It's a district that's over 35 kilometers long. We're next door to Alexco, who's just restarted operations in the district on the western half of the district. Metallic Minerals is focused on the less explored eastern half of the district. We've now got over 200 drill holes on our property. We're marching towards first resources on 3 advanced stage targets, and we've developed 12 multi-kilometer scale targets that we're in the process of starting to test and made several new discoveries on starting in 2020. 2021 is our biggest exploration program to date. We're expecting to drill over 50 holes in reverse circulation and core on both advanced stage targets and early stage targets. We're just finishing that work as we speak. We're expecting assay results to start coming out any week. We're also undertaking the first deep geophysical surveys on the project, and we're excited to see some of the results coming from that. The Keno District has had over 200 million ounces of past high-grade production. There's 100 million ounces of resources in the ground today on Alexco's side of the district. We're really targeting that 50 to 100 million ounce size silver deposit. We see potential for those types of discoveries. The company is well funded. We've been funded for completing all of our objectives for 2021. We're supported by well-recognized resource investors, including Eric Sprott, Crescat Capital, and other well-recognized funds such as US Global. Management owns 19% of the company, so it's a very tightly structured company with strong backing by well-renowned mining investors. The Metallic Minerals team, myself included, I'm one of the original co-founders at Nova Gold, helped build that company from a micro-cap mining focused company to a company today that's over $2 billion in market cap. So our team has a track record of success for major discoveries. Metallic Minerals is really poised at an exciting part of its development. We've gone from exploration focused, we're on the verge, we believe, of tabling the first mineral resource for the company sometime in 2022. We've got our Klondike gold asset that's moving towards potentially commercial production next year. So it's an exciting time for the company to be advancing and for our shareholders to be participating not only in the work we're doing on the ground, but also in what we see as a continuing bull market for silver, gold, and copper going forward.
Ja, das Video war sicherlich sehr beeindruckend. Ich muss Sie allerdings jetzt auch noch aufklären über die MiFID-Regularien. Wir haben 2 Interessenskonflikte, die wir hier offenlegen müssen. Auch bei Metallic Minerals sind wir Aktionär und unterhalten einen Dienstleistungsvertrag mit dem Explorer. Wir sprechen heute über die Edelmetallbranche. Wie gesagt, Metallic Minerals ist ein Explorer für hochgradiges Silber im Yukon, aber auch Gold, Kupfer und Silber in der Region Colorado, das sogenannte Plata Projekt. Also die Gesellschaft hat hier einiges zu bieten. Weitere Informationen, auch auf Deutsch, finden Sie auf axinocapital.de/metallic. Die Metallic Minerals gehört auch zum Metallic Group of Companies. Wir hatten ja schon in 2 weiteren Webinaren die Group 10 und die Granite Creek Copper hier vorgestellt. Alle 3 Unternehmen sind unter dem Dachverband, unter der Dachstruktur Metallic Group of Companies zusammengefasst. Warum? Alle 3 Gesellschaften explorieren auf unterschiedliche Weise in unterschiedlichen Projekten. Es sind also Edelmetalle, Industriemetalle und Batteriemetalle. Und alle 3 Gesellschaften haben ein eigenes Management, einen eigenen Fokus, aber der Dachverband hilft ihnen bei der Nutzung gemeinsamer Räumlichkeiten, bei der Nutzung gemeinsamer Geologen, bei Synergien. Also es werden hier riesige Potenziale eingespart und genutzt bei diesem Zusammenschluss. Und der CEO Greg Johnson ist auch quasi der Kopf von der ganzen Metallic Group of Companies. Und wir sind heute sehr, sehr froh, dass wir ihn in diesem Webinar präsentieren dürfen. Wir schauen hier ganz kurz mal auf die Aktionärsstruktur. Sie sehen, die Metallic Mineral ist schon sehr weit entwickelt. Man hat schon wirklich auch institutionelle Investoren. Das sieht man hier an der Struktur. Es gibt mit Eric Sprott einen sehr namhaften nordamerikanischen Investor, einen Profi in dem Edelmetallbereich. Er ist mit 16% beteiligt, aber auch institutionelle Fonds wie US Global, OTP Funds oder GrassCap oder auch MMCap Asset Management halten durchaus auch substanzielle Anteile am Unternehmen, ca. 29%. Und das Management nicht zuletzt auch mit 19% ein wesentlicher Faktor, was ja auch für uns persönlich sehr, sehr wichtig ist. Sie sehen, die Aktie handelt aktuell bei 40 Cent, hat nur 137 Millionen Aktien ausstehen. Wir kommen hier also auf eine Marktkapitalisierung von ca. 50, 60 Millionen. Also Sie sehen schon, es ist schon auch ein kleines Unternehmen, aber bietet extrem viel Potenzial und das wollen wir heute ja auch aufzeigen. Ich habe ganz bewusst mal einen 3-Jahres-Chart mitgebracht. Ich bin kein Chartist persönlich, aber ich wollte Ihnen einfach zeigen, was hier passiert ist. Letztes Jahr ist natürlich mit den Metallpreisen, hier war das Corona-Tief eigentlich relativ schnell nach oben geschossen, wenn Sie so wollen. Wir hatten also letztes Jahr bei Metallic Minerals einen 10-Bagger. Von 15 Cent sind wir dann auf über 1,50 fast gestiegen. Ja, also schon eine wahnsinnige Rallye, die man hier innerhalb von einem halben Jahr verzeichnen konnte. Sie sehen, wenn die Märkte laufen, wenn die Metallpreise gut sind, wenn Geld reinströmt in den Sektor, dann profitieren natürlich auch gleich Unternehmen, die was zum Bieten haben. Und da gehört sicherlich die Metallic Minerals dazu. Der Stopwatch-Chart zeigt aber auch hier ganz klar dann eine Seitwärtsbewegung. Das war vielleicht auch gut. Die Korrektur kam dann doch auch Mitte des Jahres. Und die Aktie bewegte sich dann seitwärts so mindestens mal 6 bis 8 Monate zwischen 60 Cent und 80 Cent, ganz grob gesagt. Bis dann allerdings dann noch wieder ein Abwärtstrend einsetzte, ja, also eher quasi in 2021. Man ist dann hier aus dem Trend herausgefallen, was sicherlich sehr schade war. Aber es sind eigentlich alle Explorationsunternehmen, auch die Produzenten sind fast wieder auf ihren Tiefs angelangt. Und wir sehen hier jetzt eine gute Konsolidierungsphase bei Metallic um die 30, 40 Cent. Also glaube ich schon auch ein ganz gutes Einstiegsniveau. Ja, was sind die heutigen Themen? Über was sprechen wir? Sicherlich auch über den Yukon. Das hatten wir in den anderen Webinaren auch. Gibt es da ähnliche Konsolidierungschancen wie auch im Silberbereich? Wir sprechen über Keno Hill, eines der weltweit wirklich hochgradigsten Silberdistrikte, wo es gibt auf unserem Planeten. Das ist ja immer so das Thema. Im Englischen sagt man Grade is King, also der Gehalt vom Metall, je besser, je höher ist King. Das heißt, je hochgradiger das vorkommt, umso besser. Das wollen auch die großen Produzenten sehen. Also das ist ein wichtiger Aspekt hier. Wir werden auch über die Vorteile reden, wenn man einen Nachbar hat, der schon eine Mine betreibt. Hier die Alexco Resources. Dann werden wir über das zweite Projekt La Plata sprechen. Das ist ein Brachflächenprojekt für Silber, Gold und Kupfer in Colorado, USA. Hier wurde also schon sehr viel Arbeit geleistet in der Vergangenheit, im letzten Metallzyklus. Die Metallic Minerals konnte das Projekt relativ günstig erwerben, jetzt zum ersten Mal auch ausbohren. Also wir sind da gespannt, wenn die ersten News kommen. Ich glaube, die Investoren haben dieses Projekt noch gar nicht auf dem Radarschirm. Dann ist die Frage, wann kommen die ersten Bohrgänse aus dem Bohrprogramm 2021? Wann werden diese veröffentlicht? Und uns interessiert natürlich auch die erste Ressourcenschätzung auf Keno Hill. Ja, man hatte noch keine Ressource und die Großinvestoren, aber auch die Großproduzenten, die wollen natürlich hier schon sehen, was kann das Unternehmen nachweisen, wo gibt es da Potenziale, das auszudehnen. Und deswegen ist es ganz wichtig, wann wir die erste Ressource hier bekommen können. Abschließend ist sicherlich auch noch berechtigt die Frage, könnte die Metallic Minerals auch dieses Plata Projekt in eine separate Gesellschaft auslagern, zugunsten auch ihrer Aktionäre, um eventuell auch eine höhere Bewertung für beide Projekte in der getrennten Situation zu erlangen. Das hat man ja auch schon mal gesehen bei anderen Gesellschaften. So, wir haben dann noch kurz hier das Porträt von unserem Investorenmagazin Stocks to Perform. Wir haben ja da immer die Firmen auch porträtiert auf Deutsch, können Sie runterladen, auf axinocapital.de finden Sie diese Information. Das wollten wir Ihnen nicht vorenthalten und Sie sehen das hier auch für die Metallic Minerals. Jetzt bedanke ich mich schon mal für die Aufmerksamkeit und werde jetzt dem Greg Johnson das Wort geben. Er ist ja Co-Host mit und wird jetzt seine Präsentation hochladen. Die wird natürlich in Englisch sein, aber ich bin sicher, Sie verstehen dadurch auch die Kernaussage. Danach haben wir noch eine Frage-Antwort-Session, wo ich dann auch zur Verfügung stehe und ich hoffe, Sie haben so viel Spaß und Freude an der Metallic Minerals wie wir selbst. Wie gesagt, wir sind Aktionäre. Und es wäre schön, wenn Sie dieses Unternehmen verfolgen. Abonnieren Sie unsere Kanäle, schauen Sie auf axinocapital.de oder auf unserem YouTube-Kanal. Dort finden Sie genügend Informationen auch zum Unternehmen. Bleiben Sie dran. Jetzt kommt der Greg Johnson und wir switchen jetzt rüber. Hey Greg, nice to meet you and I welcome you to our webinar here for Metallic Minerals. We both know each other for at least 15 years. You have been a very successful developer, also a co-founder of Nova Gold Resources, a company you brought from 10 billion market cap to $2 billion in market cap. I know you from that time as well, not from the early days, but when the stock was trading at $8 and it went up to $20, the company was already very substantial. I'm really happy to have you here, and we both know each other quite well. We have done lots of roadshows in the last metal cycle, so I know you're an excellent presenter. It's your turn, it's your place, your presentation. Please take on.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for that great introduction, Wolfgang. You covered a lot of territory, some great imagery, I think, that gives people a sense of the projects that we're working on. So let me go ahead and try and share my screen. So what we'll do here today is try to just step through a few of the highlights, particularly the Keno Hill, the Plata, and Klondike projects. We are at an exciting stage in the company's development, early days yet, but rapidly moving to first resources, which is historically, if we look at other resource stage companies, this is a major milestone that often results in significant revaluation as we move towards advancing the project through the various engineering stages towards development and eventual production. So we're going to focus today on really the Keno Hill and La Plata projects. These are silver with gold and copper as the focus. So let's go ahead and get our slides to advance. We do have technical disclosure requirements in Canada that investors in the resource space should become familiar with. You can take a look at our presentation materials, which have notes on them that give you confidence in the technical materials been reviewed by our specialists. All right, Wolfgang introduced a little bit the metallic group of companies, but I think it's worth taking a moment to just kind of go over this. So in 2016, near the bottom of the current metal price cycle, we started to put together our group of companies. My background, I started out as an exploration geologist for one of the world's largest gold companies. That was Placer Dome, which became Barrick Gold. went on to co-found NovaGold Resources. And we took that company in the last metal price cycle from a micro cap, $10 million market cap company to over $2 billion in the period of that metal price cycle. And the strategy that we used there was very similar to what we're looking to employ here with the metallic group of companies. As we brought Metallic Minerals, Group 10, and Granite Creek together, each of these three companies focused in a different set of metals. So Metallic Minerals is the silver and gold focused company. Group 10 is the battery metal and platinum group element focused company. And Granite Creek, as the name implies, is our copper focused company with gold and silver as well. We applied a common strategy to the development of these companies, bringing together this highly experienced team that had a track record of discoveries and advancing and creating value. We went in and acquired very prospective mining ground in districts that already had high grade production. So in the case of Metallic Minerals, this was next door to Alexco. In the case of Group 10, it was next door to Stillwater Mines. In the case of Granite Creek, it was next door to the Minto Mine. All three of these, some of the highest grade producing mines in silver, in platinum, and in copper. And so great neighborhood for exploration because these were all one mine companies. They had not acquired all the ground in the district around them. So that was the opportunity for us to put together a district scale land position, doing this at the bottom of the metal price cycle where we could basically afford to be able to pull these things together reasonably. And now what we're doing is employing a model where we're bringing modern technology, modern exploration tools such as machine learning and artificial intelligence, along with our stack of other tools such as satellite imagery and geophysics, to be able to really put together a comprehensive understanding of the system, to apply new modern geologic models towards exploration, and through that to make new discoveries, to define metal inventories in the ground that we can then advance and de-risk, and over time see those valued higher in the marketplace as they move towards from exploration through development into production. And really that's the fundamental underlying strategy for the three companies. One of the benefits of being in a well-developed mining district is that the infrastructure to build these mines is already there. We already have roads, we already have power, there's already an operating mine. So that means that our pathway to production can be significantly faster and significantly less capital intensive, less money to build these things, and you can move them more rapidly. And that's an advantage to our shareholders to be able to see that opportunity to advance these quickly and for relatively modest capital requirements. So looking at that NovaGold model, how did we build this company in the last metal price cycle from a $10 million market cap to a multi-billion-dollar company? It was by recognizing these very large scale assets at the bottom of the metal price cycle. So in the case of gold, it was Donlin up in Alaska. In the case of copper, it was Galore in British Columbia. In the case of copper and zinc, it was Ambler. Today, those three assets, NovaGold owns 50% of Donlin with Barrick Gold. The asset at Galore has been sold on to Newmont and Teck, and the asset at Ambler now sits in Trilogy Metals and is partnered with South 32. So collectively, the three of these assets are now, in excess of $3 billion in market value. The strategy really was one of make those acquisitions, grow those resources through exploration, de-risk those by taking them to more and more in-depth engineering studies, and through that pathway to create value. So if we look at the metallic group of companies, how are we going to apply this same model, the same framework? We've acquired 4 separate assets in the 3 companies over the last several years. Each one of these assets, we believe geologically, has the potential to be the equivalent to the assets that were in NovaGold. In other words, a world-class asset in its metal. So for instance, we see at Keno Hill for metallic minerals, the potential that Keno Hill could be a world-class silver district with over 1 billion ounces of silver, which is really kind of the benchmark you're looking for to really define world-class for silver. This is an asset very similar geologically to the Coeur d'Alene district which many large silver producers came from. And so geologically, it holds out the potential that at Keno, though it's relatively early days in terms of defining the resources. You've already got 300 million ounces of past production and current resources and lots of room to grow this asset. I'll just touch briefly on the Stillwater asset for Group 10, our metallic minerals sister company. And again, this is an asset that has the potential to be world-class for battery metals, nickel, copper, cobalt, and PGEs. And so this is an opportunity right next door to the world's highest grade platinum producer to be able to define something that we believe could be of the scale that the largest mining companies in the world are going to be interested in. Talking about Granite Creek Copper, the third asset that we acquired in the group. This, again, next door to what was one of the world's highest grade open pit copper mines. It's just gone back into production. We see the potential here for a multi-billion pound copper resource. In other words, a tier 1 scale asset in copper. And then lastly, again, in metallic minerals, the opportunity in 2019 to pick up an underexplored precious metal rich porphyry system, so copper, silver, gold, in a district that had a high grade silver and gold track record of production. And so very similar in some ways to both Keno Hill and to Galore in terms of the deposit type, and an excellent fit for metallic minerals. Already this asset is starting to gain attention from some of the majors, but the potential we see here is both high grade silver and gold and bulk tonnage copper in a system that could be a world-class asset. So collectively, over the 4 assets over the last several years, we've managed to employ this strategy that was so successful in creating value. It's still very early days where these are at effectively the initial discovery and resource expansion stages. But we see over the next several years the opportunity to create significant shareholder value as we advance these assets towards development and eventual cash flow and production. All right, so talking about metallic minerals, let's dive into the details on metallic. 3 key silver, gold, copper assets, starting with our flagship, the Keno Silver Projekt, 166 square kilometer land position next door to one of the world's highest grade producing silver mines at Keno Hill. The Plata, high grade past producer, over 90 mines and prospects producing high grade silver and gold with this porphyry system at the center. Again, world-class in scale and advancing this to create value. And then the last asset, the Klondike Gold District, where we have one of the largest packages of unmined Klondike alluvial ground. We are licensing this to experienced operators. We've advanced significantly this year on the project with drilling and bulk sample testing, and we expect the first of those areas to go into commercial production in 2022. So what are the key elements when looking at metallic minerals that I think investors should focus on? First of all, you're at the right time. We've gone through a major bear market cycle. The last cycle peaked in 2011. We went through a bear market until 2016 through about 2020. We are now in the very early days, we believe, of the next multi-year commodity cycle, and precious metals tend to lead those cycles. So we think it's very early in that process. These tend to be 6 to 10 year cycles. So you're looking at companies in the precious metal space at the right time. Secondly, you've got a team with a track record of world-class discoveries and advancing those and creating value. And the investors that back metallic minerals include renowned resource investors such as Eric Sprott, US Global, Crescat, and others. We're a well-funded company. We've been able to undertake our largest exploration programs to date this year. We're funded into 2022 with no debt. And location-wise, we're not out exploring in a greenfields area that's never had a discovery. We're exploring right next door to assets that have demonstrated world-class grades and scale, the kind of metrics that the major mining companies are all looking for. And we're doing this next door to existing infrastructure such as roads and power and ports. So this really is going to facilitate lower capital and more rapid development. So how did we manage to put this whole package together? Let's just quickly step through kind of the steps. First of all, we recognize the historic pedigree of this district. with over 200 million ounces of silver in the Keno Silver District produced historically, and 100 million ounces of one of the highest grade resources in the industry today. In addition, there have been two major discoveries in this district. So it's not just a historic district. The Birmingham and the Flame and Moth deposits collectively are two of the very best undeveloped, going into production now, assets in the world in terms of silver. And so it demonstrates that there's lots of potential for new discoveries in this district. We consolidated 166 square kilometer land position. This is huge. This is a very large area with geologic prospects and past producers across the entire district, including 8 past producing mines on our ground. In addition, we've looked at the less explored parts of the district and quickly identified that there were 6 areas that could be moved rapidly towards initial resources that we've been focusing on and advancing. And we identified another 12 areas with kilometric scale anomalies, very large scale, the type of and size of anomalies that the major mining companies look the world over for. And we have 12 of them on our property. And we have done the initial drilling on these target areas, making discoveries in 2020 that we followed up in 2021 with results pending. But we're quite excited about the new developments that are coming out of these new target areas in the less explored parts of the Keno District. We've undertaken the same process at La Plata. And as I mentioned earlier, because we're in these mature mining districts with infrastructure, this greatly facilitates the ability to rapidly advance these. And it really gives us a number of pathways as a company to pursue. If we find modest sized deposits, those are going to be very attractive to our next door neighbors, the operating mines near next door, as potential reserve replacements. So these could be joint ventures or arrangements such as a royalty for production. Likewise, if we find something larger, it may attract a large company to come in and partner with us or our neighbor to buy us out. And if we find something larger still, it may attract one of the biggest producers to come in and perhaps buy both the next door neighbor operating mine and metallic minerals to put those together. And so longer term, as this cycle unfolds and metallic minerals defines its resources and starts to grow them, these are the kinds of opportunities for significant shareholder value creation and potential liquidity. So let's put Keno Hill in context. If we look at all of the primary silver mines in the world, so this is a chart showing you the reserve grade, what we can see is that there are 6 mines that really stand out in terms of grade. And the Keno Hill is the highest grade of all of those. So when the big mining companies look around the world and they're thinking about acquisitions to be able to grow their production, they focus on quality. They want to know it's got grade, that it's got exploration potential, and that it's in low political risk jurisdiction. Keno Hill checks all those boxes. So it's definitely one of the few districts of this quality that's controlled by junior mining companies, and it's going to be a target for potential M&A as this cycle matures. This is what the mill looks like. It sits right in the center of the Keno Hill district. This is the area where the rock is hauled to, it's crushed, it's ground, it's floated to separate the inert rock material from the metal, and then creates a concentrate, which is a very high silver, lead concentrate, and zinc concentrate. And this mill has lots of room to be able to expand. So the opportunity here is through exploration by Alexco, the owner of the mill, and us next door. We've got an opportunity to utilize this existing infrastructure for production from our own ground. And if we take a look at the economic study that was recently produced by Alexco, you can see that the metrics here are quite compelling. With an average production of over 4 million ounces and as much as 5 million ounces a year, this mine is already the 15th largest silver producing mine in the world and has room to expand to become a top 10 producer. Operating costs at under $12 an ounce, with today's price of silver at over $22 an ounce, shows you the margins are very strong here. And the total capital cost to bring the 2 mines in production, Birmingham and Flame and Moth, was just a little over $20 million. So very low capital compared to other projects that you'll hear about in the mining industry. They're often measured in hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to build. This results in a very high internal rate of return for this project. So the money invested returns massively because of the very high grades and very modest capital. So what does a Keno Hill deposit look like? So this is underground at the Bell Keno mine. This is where Alexco is mining today. And what I'll do is I'll put on here some markings so we can see the ore. But effectively, between the two red lines shows you one of these structural high-grade vein deposits that are common at Keno Hill. And you can see the shiny metallic areas. That is the high-grade silver and lead. The dark-colored materials, the blacks and the browns, between the two red lines is a mineral, which is a zinc mineral. And then the orange and light-colored material is quartz. So it's almost entirely made of metal. It's what we call a massive sulfide deposit. And it's very clear-cut when you hit this because of its extremely high grades. Typically, these are not particularly wide. The largest of these deposits is up to 20 meters, so they're quite compact. But because of those very high grades, these have very attractive economics. Individual deposits in the district so far have been in up to the 50 to 100 million ounce level. And why that's significant is if you talk to the big silver producers, they'll say to you, we're looking for deposits that have the potential to be 100 million ounces or more. And so Keno Hill fits that target for what the large silver producers are looking for. And metallic minerals work is not only finding these types of classic Keno type veins on our ground, but we're also seeing potential for larger scale bulk tonnage silver deposits, particularly on the eastern part of the district. So let's just take quickly a look at the land holdings. So on the green, on the left-hand side of the slide here, the western half of the district is the Alexco holdings. And what you can see here in the orange circles are the very largest historic producing mines. You can see along these lines that represent these major productive structures. The yellow represent the new resources in the district that have been put together in the last several years, up to 100 million ounces of material. And then the small red circles represent these historic high-grade producing mines that are on metallic minerals holdings. Our land shown here in the orange color is dominantly on the eastern half of the district, as well as to the south, and in some places internal to Alexco. And we've defined in these black circles 6 advanced stage target areas that are moving towards initial resources. And in the red circles on the map, we've defined 12 kilometric scale soil anomalies that have the potential to be major discoveries. And we're starting to undertake that initial work on those areas today. So lots of areas for us to be focused on and lots of success from testing these targets with the drill, with this year being our largest program, following up our second largest program, which was last year. So one of the big areas of excitement is on the eastern half of the district. So this picture we're looking at here on the slide is just the eastern half of the Keno district, about 15 kilometers across. And what that drilling from 2020 and followed up this year in 2021 has done is it's testing these brightly colored areas that are enriched in silver in the soils. Explorationists often use soil sampling as a way to understand the metal in the rock below, because soil is weathered bedrock. So if you've got silver in the soil, it's a great indicator of metal in the underlying rock below. And so these large target areas, there's a scale bar in the lower right showing 2 kilometers, are up to 5 kilometers long and running between 10 and 100 grams per ton silver. Now that grade, why is that grade significant? That is ore grade in many open pit silver mines, and that's the grade of the silver in the soils. So our testing that we've undertaken is basically starting to drill these targets. We're hitting in the holes. We're starting to develop the extension of the Keno district 15 kilometers to the east that shows that what's been found historically on the west is continuing to the east. And we're starting to develop new resources and really breathing life into this extension of the district that was not previously recognized. So why are we excited about these bulk tonnage targets? Well, if we take a look at the very biggest silver deposit in the world, the Penasquito mine, which is owned by Newmont, it is one of these
bulk tonnage silver deposits, over 1 billion ounces of silver that's mined open pit, comes along with lead and zinc and copper. It sits directly above a porphyry system. So you often hear this term porphyry. It's an intrusive related deposit. These are the big producers of the world's copper. These are some of the biggest mines in the world. In this case, they're not mining the porphyry. They're actually mining the material above the porphyry, where the veins and the structural zones come through and have enriched this area in silver and lead and zinc and other metals. We see the same setting here at Keno East. And effectively, we have targets that are similar in footprint to Penasquito. We're just starting to test those, but we're seeing a combination of high-grade veins and bulk tonnage in these targets that are very exciting for early-stage discovery and demonstrating the potential for real scale on the eastern part of the Keno District. All right, so that was the Keno Hill. I know we went quickly through that, but if there are questions, you can certainly feel free to reach out to us, and we can go through any of this if you have more questions on it. On an appointment basis, give us a call. We're happy to walk through. We're now going to touch on quickly our two other assets, La Plata and the Klondike Gold District. And again, just to give you a sense of what we're doing and the opportunities. So first of all, the location. La Plata is located in the southwestern U.S., near the corner of Colorado. It's in an area that's historically known as the Colorado Mineral Belt. And this area has a long history of historic high-grade silver and gold production, and more recently is now the home to several major world-class mines. The Bingham Canyon mine to the north, operated by Rio Tinto. Freeport owns two large porphyry systems in the belt. You've got Newmont with their Cripple Creek deposit, which is a large-scale open pit operation. And then if we look at the historic districts, you have a number of these high-grade vein districts that were mined from the 1800s to the 1940s that are just now starting to be relooked at. And La Plata is one of these districts. So looking at a cross-section through the La Plata district, this really kind of helps map out what we see here. We have a combination of a porphyry system, similar to what I mentioned at Penasquito, surrounded by high-grade veins. And this is a district-scale land package. Historically, you had 90 different high-grade mines and producers. They were mining these structures, shown in the red lines and the green lines on either side of the porphyry system. So completely surrounding this porphyry. In the 1950s, we saw Rio Tinto and then Freeport come into the district, recognizing this exposed porphyry, and start to drill it. They drilled some 54 drill holes, created a historic resource in this area. We have basically taken over this ground that's not seen exploration for 50 years and are bringing our modern exploration tools to bear in terms of satellite imagery, airborne geophysics, soil sampling, and modern modeling techniques. The opportunity here is with us doing confirmation drilling this year, bringing in all of the historic information from these very experienced and well-regarded operators, have an opportunity to rapidly advance this to a 43-101 resource on this project and create value for shareholders and begin to move this project into the project development phase. Last asset that we're going to talk about is the Klondike Gold District Holdings. This is the region up in the Yukon that has had over 20 million ounces of production. Today, it produces nearly 50% of all the gold in the Yukon from large-scale open pits in these gravel deposits. We will receive a 10 to 15% royalty on our ground, and we have room for as many as 12 or 15 operators on this ground. It's fully road accessible. It's fully permitted for production. We already have 3 operators in place. The exploration programs this year included drilling and bulk sample testing, and at least one of those is going to go into initial production starting in 2022. So this means cash flow from metallic minerals and the ability to attract additional operators further upstream. This is very similar to the early days at NovaGold, where we had a sand and gravel business in Nome, Alaska, that effectively created the same kind of cash flow and helped fund NovaGold, particularly through the bear market period. So the opportunity to have something producing gold, producing cash flow for the company is really an outstanding opportunity, and it really sets metallic minerals aside. So let's talk about share capital structure. We've got 136 million shares out. You've got an ownership structure where management is very much there alongside of investors at 19% ownership. Second largest owner is Eric Sprott, a renowned resource investor and one of the key early investors in NovaGold as well, I might add. We've got a series of other funds such as US Global, Crescat, OPT, and others. These are all groups that understand mining and are interested in taking stakes early on things they see as quality. The whole silver and gold sector has been going through a consolidation over the last little more than a year, 14, 15 months at this point. That's not unusual at the early start of a bull market cycle. At this point, the trends are still all in place longer term. And we think we're going through a kind of a consolidation period here over the last couple of months, which has a high probability as we move forward of really advancing to higher highs and higher lows for the whole sector. And particularly in silver, the silver sector has been really beaten up. There's some fantastic value opportunities today, especially in the exploration development stage companies. We've got a market cap between $50 and $60 million today. We've got $5 million in the bank. We have no debt. We're well funded to take us well into 2022. And we just wrapped up the largest exploration program to date. So there's going to be a whole series of news events coming for Keno, for La Plata, and for Klondike, which really should help solidify for the marketplace the quality of these assets. So just to wrap up, what makes metallic minerals stand apart from other silver names or other exploration and development names? We have assets here that show world-class scale. This is what the majors go looking for. Scale measured in kilometers, grade that's economic. The deposit models we're looking for are some of the biggest of their kind for their metal. And you have technical teams here with the experience of discovery and advancement in these kind of deposits. Secondly, we're in low-risk local jurisdictions that have a long track record of mining. You've got a highly experienced team. You've consolidated these land positions. You've got the opportunity to participate in the growth of these assets. Big exploration programs completed in 2021, and the opportunity for us to advance. And lastly, the leverage to the silver, gold, and copper market that comes with these assets that have this types of metals. So hopefully, this has been a good introduction to the assets and the company and our strategy for creating value. We've been working with the Axino team for many more years than just the initial 4 years of metallic minerals. And we're excited to be out and telling a story in your marketplace that we think has the opportunity to really create outstanding value for investors. So thank you very much for your time today. And we welcome any of you to contact us for further information.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg, for the great presentation. I mean, you have been always an excellent presenter, and I know you for 15 years now. So it's not new to me, but it's good really to have such management really progressing those assets and telling investor community what the potential is. Before we got the first question from our audience, I would like to start with my question today. And I would like to know, when do you think that the metal cycle will restart? We have seen last year a quite nice run from, let's say, early of the year towards the summer, but then all of a sudden it corrected again. Now the gold price and the silver price is in a sideways trend. We want to know what you believe from an insider, a market insider. When do you expect really a takeoff of the metal market? And with the inflation now going above 5 or 6%, maybe globally, we are waiting for such a wake up of that sector and certainly more activities in the metal space.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points, Wolfgang. I think probably we saw the metals run a little too hot back in 2020 from the crash in March of 2020 to the peak in August of 2020. That meant there was profit taking, and we've seen consolidation, but it's healthy. If you look at the trend lines and you look back, I think we put the low in terms of the bear market from 2016 to 2019. I think we're in the early days and we're getting started. The trends longer term are up. I think it's very bullish for silver and for gold. I think we'll see a takeout of the previous highs in both these metals in coming periods. And, it has been constructive here for the last several months of the fall in that we've seen higher highs and higher lows. That is the beginning of the next wave, I think. And I think things are well positioned. This is one of the best seasonalities for the precious metals in terms of silver and gold. Often this period of the fall till early into Q1 is a very strong period. We're seeing buying from central banks. We're seeing investors who are looking at the sector. Maybe they haven't started to deploy capital yet, but they're certainly looking at the sector. And as you mentioned, with inflation rearing its head, something we really haven't seen since the 1970s, I think there could be a major sentiment shift that sees investors want to have hard assets in their portfolio.
Excellent. Before we dig into all the detailed questions, there is one in particular coming up, and the question, could you please explain a little bit the royalty streaming business here? Because that's not so familiar here in our investor community. They understand exploration and that you want to grow a resource and somehow develop an asset, but what in particular is the business case for your alluvial gold Klondike?
Yeah, so the concept with a royalty or a stream is that you are basically taking ownership of the actual metal production without contributing capital towards its production. So if a mine is producing 100,000 ounces of gold a year, the operator is spending all the money to build the mine, to do the processing, and then they produce that production and they have an operating cost. The royalty or stream holder doesn't contribute any of that. They just take their percentage of the gold. And so these can be very attractive. They take none of the mining risk and they take all of the metal value. And so the idea here is that we've got room for as many as 10 or 15 operators, that this could be very significant cash flow. Our hope is to start to cover our operating costs as a company, and then ultimately to build this to a significant business. And we can make a decision down the road if we keep it in metallic minerals, if we sell it to a pure royalty company, or spin it out or some other thing. But the opportunity to have non-dilutive cash flow that comes into us with others spending the money to mine the material, and we just take our 10 or 15% of the physical gold, is very attractive. And that's a very high royalty relative to most hard rock mines, which are often 1 or 2%. So, and that's because the operating costs for an alluvial operation are much lower. And so the producers can afford to pay a higher royalty. So this is, it's still early days. It's not the main focus of metallic minerals, but it's exciting to have this opportunity and to see it advance as much as it did this year, and the likelihood that we're actually going to see real production starting next year.
That's a good explanation. I think now it's a little bit clearer to our investor community. So the questions are popping up here. The question number 2 would be, what is the potential, especially on Keno East? Is that also a part you have drilled in particular in 2022, or is that something you have to go into 2022 again?
Yeah, so I think the potential we see at Keno East, the geology is the same setting that we see on the west. These productive structures that have all these mines along them continue onto our ground. It doesn't stop at the property boundary. So the opportunity has always been that continue along those productive trends, drill on those, you're going to be able to develop high-grade resources just like Alexco is mining today. The new opportunities, the recognition of the very significant footprints we're seeing in the surface geochemistry, so the silver in the rocks and the soils, and the supportive geophysics, which is coincident with these anomalies. And so what it's suggesting is that we may be seeing systems that are much larger than anything that's been seen in the district before. And so that holds out the potential for bulk tonnage. And that would be a game changer for this district. That would be something that would completely change the scale of the system and definitely raise the profile of the district as something that the bigger silver producers would be interested in. In terms of our 2022 program, we're just coming out of the largest program to date on all 3 projects, but particularly on Keno. So those numbers are starting to come together. We'll have probably the first results from the central part of the district here soon. After we get that data in, the next step for us is we're modeling it in 3 dimensions. We're understanding what those intercepts mean. And then from there, we can start to lay out our program, which we would expect to be at least as large as this year's for 2022. Likewise, at La Plata, same thing. As those results start to come in and we're starting to model them, understanding what we've got, doing our internal modeling and determining whether or not we're able to put together something large enough to put out an initial resource, for instance. But the process is pretty straightforward. Once you develop the resource, then you want to drill laterally down dip to try to grow that resource, build it through time. Then you start to move into the engineering stages. Typically, there's 3 engineering stages, what we call a preliminary economic assessment, a pre-feasibility, and then a feasibility. And at a feasibility, a bank would loan you money or investors would loan you money to build your mine. So very low, very high level of confidence. And as you move along, typically the market would give you a higher and higher enterprise value per ounce of metal in the ground as you de-risk it and advance it towards cash flow and production.
So when can investors and shareholders expect the first initial resource at Keno Hill? Is that already in 2022? Is it the first quarter, second quarter? Can you give a little an outline here?
Yeah, we're still, as I said, we still have to take a look at, it's going to be dependent for Keno Hill. It's going to be dependent on our drilling from this year. So we'll take a look at those numbers and see if we kind of have that critical mass. It's certainly our objective, remains our objective to advance to a resource at Keno as soon as we can. But we have to look at the data to determine whether or not that will be next year. At La Plata, because we have such a large amount of historic drilling already that we're adding to, we've got a bit of a head start there because there's a historic resource. So that's one that we have a higher degree of confidence. Looks like, we're still doing the work on that, but that looks like that one could, be in the resource category either right away or after a second round of drilling. So we're optimistic that we've got 2 assets that are advancing towards resources. We're on the right path. And I think that pathway is really what investors should be looking towards in terms of value creation.
But that brings us directly to the next question. La Plata looks like a second flagship project. Are there any plans to spin that asset out into a separate company? It seems to me as well that you do not get really any valuation for La Plata, even if it's also a big system and of your potential underneath what you have expressed in your presentation. So
yeah, we certainly see the potential that La Plata could be a company maker in its own right. And so we'll have to see longer term whether or not the market does give us a value. I mean, if we look at Nova Gold, in that period from 1999 to 2011, the last cycle, all the value accrued to Donlin, which was the core asset, but then eventually the copper asset, Galore Creek, had an equal value. So the market gave full value to both. It took time, but ultimately it helped expand the value of the company. So we'll have to determine whether or not it makes sense to keep La Plata in metallic, longer term. But certainly we see the potential that it could be, a multi-billion-dollar valuation just for La Plata. It could be an asset on par with Keno Hill. And so, at this point, we don't have any near-term plans to do anything other than understand it, develop the resource, and advance it, and then make the determination down the road. And that's good for investors to know that they've got that maybe undervalued component that sits there that either will get value directly in the company or potentially could be ownership in a separate company if it was taken through a spin out, for instance.
That sounds good to me. So next question. One shareholder is asking, what is your personal opinion on the share price for 2022? I mean, that's a good question, which management normally cannot really answer from a legal point of view, but maybe you can give also a little bit an idea of what you personally believe.
Yeah, I think if we look at what back over the last 18 months, we see the whole sector in silver came out. It was really oversold in that market crash in 2020. Metallic Minerals was undertaking drilling, and there was a lot of excitement what we're doing. Eric Sprott came into as an investor. So all that combination saw metallic trade north of $1 a share. I think that's a very reasonable valuation just for Keno. For the company. Now we've gone through a pretty severe correction for the last 14 months, and that has brought the value in the SILJ ETF, for instance, on New York, in all of the producers and the exploration development stage companies down significantly from those highs. But I think those past highs are good benchmarks for, a fairer value assessment of where we are. And right now, sentiment is very low. So if you're going to buy low and sell high, this is the time that you want to be looking at the silver sector. And these are some excellent opportunities to buy things on sale at attractive discounted levels. And I think those highs of just, the recent fasts are a good benchmark for, that value and higher on these assets in this sector.
Agreed. When we were trading above $1 or around $1 level, we certainly had more trading volume. It looks like, or it seems to me that we had more institutional investors coming into the market. And this is certainly going to change back when the sentiment will move into our direction. The next question would be, are you also buying shares personally, and how many shares do you have hold so far? And are you buying also at this level or at the current price level?
Yeah, absolutely. I add to my position. I participate in every financing along the way. I am the largest shareholder in the management team. I personally own over 7 million shares of the company. So I've never sold a share, but I buy and participate all the time, especially on these pullbacks and low price opportunities. And I think investors, it's always a good opportunity when you're trading smaller exploration development stage, companies. When you're trading on these, make sure you're using limit orders. It's a good idea to break up your purchases, maybe into 2 or 3 purchases, because you never know where you are price wise. And if we are in a higher high, higher low type cycle, this is a great opportunity to be buying on those pullbacks. And when others are fearful, to be taking positions, because I'm quite confident we're in a new multi-year commodity bull market cycle, and these tend to last 6 to 10 years. And so this is a real opportunity for investors to look at assets, look at the team, look at the projects, their background, and those are the kind of companies that you want to be participating in this bull market cycle.
So referring to the next question, looking to a longer time horizon, you will drill out the first resource that could happen next year, and then maybe expanded resource. But when could be a PA in your time schedule, in 2 or 3 years, or even longer, because of the size of the company, of the project, actually?
Yeah, so there are some good rules of thumb on this. I mean, typically you spend 2 or 3 years in the resource growth period. And my experience with NovaGold, for instance, showed that if you're growing resources and you're active and you're expanding it, and it's a positive market, in other words, it's a bull market, the market will give value. The ounces are growing and the market's valuation is growing as metal prices go up. So that's a great way to create value. And typically 2 to 3 years is that period. I mean, really, as an investor, if your company is still growing and they're making it bigger, you want to cheer them on and see that happen. Ultimately, you get to a point where it's as big as you think it's going to reasonably get. And that's typically when you would see a company do that first engineering stage, the PEA, or preliminary economic assessment. It usually takes about a year. Then if you go, sometimes companies will go straight to a feasibility if they're advanced enough, and that's another year or so. So a pathway to think about is 2 or 3 years in that exploration phase of growing resources, and then a year for each engineering stage. And then typically in the Yukon where we are, you're looking at 1 or 2 years of permitting. But all along the way, that's an opportunity to be able to basically see value that's created. And historically, if we use the metric of enterprise value per resource ounce, what we tend to see is ounces are valued heavily discounted at the early stages. And as you advance towards feasibility, that discount is reduced by the market towards that of a producer. So if we look out there in the marketplace today, the average producer is trading at $300-400 an ounce of gold in the ground. In other words, the market is more or less giving them profit margin per ounce in the ground of reserves. A development stage company is going to trade at a much lower level, reflecting the fact of the time that has to go on to go to production and the capital that has to be raised. And early stage exploration, even greater. But that gives you a pathway for value when you look at these resource stage companies, once they table an initial resource, you can start to put some metrics around, well, what should a company like this be trading? Is it expensive? Is it attractive? And then knowing where a producers are valued, that gives you a trajectory. That gives you a pathway to say, if my company can keep advancing, it's going to go from $10 an ounce to $400 an ounce if it's successful in going into production, as an example.
Yeah, I think you don't need a PA potentially because of the size of the project. If you have your initial resource, grow that, I'm sure somebody will knock on your door for the asset or for the company. It is obvious that you are in a great spot, in a safe jurisdiction, high grade, as you said. It ticks all the boxes what we need to be an investor and shareholder, and then you have an operator next to you. So it's clear to me that you are not bringing that asset into production. So a PA is maybe not so important than the resource, the size and the style of the whole deposit. Greg, what do you think is needed for the market to get more recognition for metallic minerals? Obviously, there has been a good move because of the market environment, but all of a sudden, when the environment goes in the other direction, you are weakened. And to me, it looks like not too many people have really understood the potential of that asset and the company, actually both assets. So what is needed? Is it the resource? Is it the drill results? Or what is the kickoff you believe you are getting more headwinds here?
Yeah, I think that, when we look at the if we look at the market, like if we look at this relative market performance, this blue line is the SILJ ETF. So that's the Silver Junior Producers ETF. The green line is metallic minerals, and the orange line here is the Venture Index, which is a good Canada-wide small cap index. And what you can see is these things all tend to move together. And so I think really two things. Investors particularly value exploration stage companies when they believe metal prices are moving higher. So in a way, exploration stage companies are almost like a call option, a leveraged investment that doesn't have an expiry to metals. So, if people are expecting metal prices to be higher in the future, they value exploration stage companies. In addition, I think, the big thing is you've got to have an asset that people believe has value. We have that with Keno Hill and with Plata. You have to have a team with the experience to know how to advance them. You have to be active and out drilling and advancing your project, and that value will come. Sometimes it takes a while. Nova Gold traded at $10 an ounce for a very long time. And then we were at $25 an ounce in the ground. And then we were at 75. And then we were at 100 as we advanced. And metallic minerals and its sister companies are going to go through the same pathway. First big milestone is get a resource. The second big milestone is grow that resource as much as you can. And then your kind of third, fourth, and fifth milestones are to advance that engineering-wise to create higher value because of the lower risk of that asset as it advances. And so that's really the key for any company is you got to have the right asset, you got to have the right team, and you got to be advancing it. And those big milestones like resources and growing resources and then the engineering studies are the keys for investors to follow.
I think that's an excellent summary, Greg. Thank you very much. If we don't have any additional questions, and I don't see those popping up, I think, you presented the company very well. It's the third of that metallic group of companies, and we are excited. We are shareholders of all three. We have pointed it out earlier, but there's a summary buy when it's cheap, and it looks like it's cheap, right? And the market will turn around, and certainly those companies with such potential assets will be in the focus of also bigger investors. So we are confident that this is a good opportunity to buy. Greg, thank you very much for the presentation. We will do that in the next year as well, and hopefully you have great drill results. Please follow us on YouTube and Twitter, and also on our website, axinocapital.de. You find a lot of information also in German. So follow the company, follow us, and we hope to update you soon with good news on metallic minerals and all the other companies Greg is involved with. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you very much, Wolfgang, for hosting us.